right. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Let me know if you guys can hear me all right. This is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, also of Activist Post, Press News, antimedia.org. And it looks like I'm live, so if you can hear me okay, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I'm going to be watching this on one screen and talking to you on this screen. Got two computers going here, and I'm excited to talk to you guys. Today is Friday, November 17th, 2017, and it's been, I don't know, a couple months at least since I've done this live show. For a good while, I was doing this every Friday. Some of you may remember I was doing this, holding my phone to my face and walking around, and that worked for a while, but I also used to do this show when I first started it several years ago, and it was a lot more involved. It involved a two-person crew, sometimes three-person, and live interviews, call-ins, music video breaks, and all kinds of fun stuff. So we stopped doing that, and it slowly just kind of, I've just changed the format over time, and I started using the phone. But I want to get back to stepping up to the production quality of this show. And the internet's weird, you know, if you don't know, sometimes having high quality helps you get audience. Other times it really doesn't matter. You can just be talking to a camera, talking to yourself, and people will listen, and if you have something valuable to say, they will, you know, they'll tune in. So I understand that, but I still want to bring something a bit higher quality. So if you can hear me okay and you're good, I think I'm getting thumbs up, everybody can hear me, please do two things for me if you don't mind. Comment below, let people know where you're listening from. So say you're listening from Houston, Texas, post Houston, Texas, or Tulsa, Oklahoma, or somewhere in Australia. Wherever you're listening from, comment below, let people know that. And if you see someone who's near you, comment to them, maybe connect with them, see if you guys can work together to build community in your area, to achieve change, to work on the problems that you guys see, and to focus on the solutions that you want to create. I'm sharing this out on my social media while you guys do that, and if you would do that as well, comment below, let people know where you're listening from, and share on any timelines, your timeline, your personal timeline, your friends' timeline, any groups or pages that you are involved in, because for the next 30 to 45 minutes, I'm going to share with you lots of important information, valuable information from my articles that I've personally written and researched, as well as other journalist friends of mine that I know and trust and value their analysis. So if you're you're interested in being informed, you came to the right place, and I will try to get back to doing this every Friday. And as I said, we're going to step it up. We're going to be creating a set. I'm in my room right now, you can see my room. We're going to be creating a set, and I'll probably have a co-host, and we'll try to avoid the skipping as much as possible and just get a clean stream. And so lots of good things coming. But for now, let's get into what's going on here. I've now shared it on the Mind Unleashed. Shout out to everybody on the Mind Unleashed. I've shared it on my page, the Wake Up News crew. What's up, Wake Up News? And I'm sure you guys have shared it out a couple places, and you guys are also commenting below, and I appreciate that. And I also want to say shout out to everybody who visited with us and communicated with me while I was on my tour. For those who don't know, this summer and part of the fall, I took part in a 9-week 48-city national tour across the United States called the Decentralize Your Life Tour. You can find more about that on the consciousresistance.com/tour. And I visited a lot of these places. So shout out to Oceanside, California. What's up, Jessica? What's up, Gypsy? Traveling the United States. How are you guys doing? Boston, Great Lakes Basin, Grand Rapids, Chicago, Gold Coast, Australia, Delta, Colorado. What's going on? Awesome, everybody. Yeah, and we're definitely going to take some questions tonight. I see some questions about Tom DeLonge and To the Stars Academy. We'll talk all about that. I will answer your questions. For now, though, I have a set of stories that I want to get into, and let's do that. Let's check out what we got going on here. So first off, let me get rid of this page. Let's look at, if you've never been to my website, here's the Conscious Resistance Network right here. You can go check out all of the shirt I'm wearing right here. You can get it at this shirts tab right here. And all my books can be downloaded for free here as well. And this is just a place where any individuals come to post their content. I put all my interviews, all of my content here on this website. If you're interested, if you want to learn more about what we do, go search this. You'll see a lot of different series I've done. You can see this Conscious Vegans that me and my partner Miriam do together. This is a talk I've given, and there's music videos. There's lots of different content on there, so check that out. And also, if you want to stay apprised of my journalism, this is my Contently page, which is basically just a social media profile for journalists. And every article I write, including the ones we're going to go over tonight, can be found right here at derrickbroze.contently. That's contently.com. And everything we're going to talk about tonight and all the articles I've ever written for the past 4 years or so should be found on here, and you can do some digging if you like. But yeah, be sure to bookmark that page, especially because I'm not active on social media at the moment. On Facebook, I'm streaming right now through our Conscious Resistance page, but my personal profile is not active. So let's talk about some of the news here. So there's my bookmark that page. Let's get into the first story that I wrote this week, and that is about this retired FBI agent who works now I'm not sure where he's involved now, but he's a retired agent. He used to work for the FBI, and he headed up the FBI's investigation after 9/11. This is a story that I haven't seen covered anywhere, including on other independent alternative media. I've only seen it reported one single place, and that is the place where I took the story from and added some more context for those of you who want to understand the situation better. But basically, this retired FBI agent, he's an investigator for the FBI's investigation, which was formed after 9/11, and some of you might not remember this. I was just in high school, so some of you may be aware, others maybe not. But he's a 25-year veteran of the FBI who retired in 2008. You can see here he led the FBI's Pent-Bomb, or Pentagon Twin Towers bombing investigation, a 400-member task force responsible for investigating the 9/11 attacks. And now, as part of the ongoing lawsuit, the family members, the 9/11 family members and survivors who've been suing the Saudi kingdom to try to find out the true role that they've played, the lawsuit has gone forth. If you don't remember this, at the end of Obama's administration last year, he vetoed the bill, which is known as JASTA, and Congress overrode his veto, and now it became law. So that allows the victims of 9/11 and their families to sue the Saudi kingdom and to try to see what they know about this. Now, I know there's some 9/11 researchers who are deeper into this whole rabbit hole who think that the Saudi issue is just a limited hangout or a distraction. I don't necessarily believe that. I think there's elements of Saudi involvement. We should look into the Pakistani government, of course, the U.S. government, and Israel as well. All four of those countries should be investigated and researched as far as their role in 9/11, because it wasn't the hijackers acting alone. We can definitely say that for certain. So this lawsuit is going forth, and the family members are suing them, and this FBI agent, whose name is Stephen K. Moore, he filed a 6-page statement as part of the lawsuit, and it's in this statement that he basically accuses the 9/11 Commission of lying about the results of his team's investigation. So again, his team was the Pentagon Twin Towers bombing investigation, 400-member task force responsible for investigating the 9/11 attacks for the FBI. And specifically, he disputed statements made by the 9/11 Commission regarding 2 of the alleged hijackers who were from Saudi Arabia. These are the men who are accused of flying the plane into the Pentagon. Now, I don't necessarily believe a plane hit the Pentagon, but either way, these men are accused of that. And the investigators found that they have direct connections to possible Saudi agents, including an imam who they said had extreme views, and another suspected Saudi agent who was posing as a student. So the investigator, Stephen K. Moore, goes on and on basically to say that they're lying. The 9/11 Commission lied, and they're lying about the involvement of this, and this continues to be ignored. So dig into that, check that out. Damon's posting all the links. If you haven't noticed, you'll see over there under the comments, the Conscious Resistance, Damon is posting all the links I cover, including this one. And let me check out some of the questions here. Great news and advancements. I have this question brewing in my head for some time now. With our gas prices going up, how do we not know that our corrupt government hasn't been tapping into the oil reserves out of Alaska, but charging us the price they would from the oil coming from the Middle East? That anything's possible. I don't trust the government at all, and it's hard to trust the corporate media, so I don't know. Yeah. So that's story number 1. Let's move on to the next one. Please do look further into that, though, and I've written pretty extensively on this. I'll say this, I wrote one a couple months back that you can find about the 9/11 family members. Terry Strada, who's the main mother who's headed up a lot of this push from 9/11 family members, she was calling on Donald Trump to investigate the influence of the Saudi government, because the media wants you to be worried about the Russians and such, but the Saudi government, a couple months ago, they hired 100 agents, was what they referred to, lobbyists, to try to push against the JASTA bill. So they They brought in all these veterans into the DC area, and they didn't tell any of the veterans that the whole thing was funded by the Saudi kingdom, and just tried to tell them why, if this bill passed, it was going to be bad for veterans and to influence the veterans. So you've got another nation, Saudi Arabia, who has immense power and works with the United States because of the petrodollar, sending in 100 lobbyists, 100 Saudi agents to try to influence American veterans against a bill that would directly, go against them. I think that's problematic, and I wrote an article about that. You should look into that. But let's move on. This next one here is another one important. This is Donald Trump's health secretary nominee, who his name is Alex Azar. He's an establishment big pharma exec. So for those of you out there, if there's anybody still believing and you're listening to this program, this is of course the Conscious Resistance Live, episode number 77. If you're listening and you have some faith for whatever reason in Donald Trump or this system in general, please, I implore you to look at the articles I've written about Donald Trump. I don't hate Donald Trump or attack him because I think he's a Nazi or he's a racist or any of these things, and he may be, I don't know, but that's not where I focus on. I point to factual evidence of him appointing people involved with the Bilderberg Group, Goldman Sachs, people who are just part of the status quo. So this whole idea of draining the swamp, it's BS, and you should know that by now. I mean, that should be completely clear if you've been paying any kind of attention. And this example is just another great example, another prime example of that. And if you don't believe me, then please just hold on a moment. Remember, it's the mark of an intelligent person to be able to confront information, to take in information, and even if you don't agree with it, still be willing to listen. So if you're having some cognitive dissonance right now and you're saying, no, Trump is the anti-establishment candidate, he's an outsider, there's no way he's a part of the system, he's not a part of the New World Order, the deep state, the ruling class, whatever, well, just give me a moment and let me explain something to you. So Donald Trump just nominated a former lobbyist and executive of a major pharmaceutical company to be a U.S. Health Secretary. Specifically, he's supposed to be the Secretary for the Department of the Department of Health and Human Services. Trump tweeted out, "Happy to announce I'm nominating Alex Azar to be the next HHS Secretary. He will be a star for better healthcare and lower drug prices." So the guy's been attacked now. Of course, people are pointing out that this dude obviously is an establishment player. Donald Trump talked about draining the swamp, and some would say, well, he's a businessman, so of course you're going to put people who work in that industry to be in charge of this, right? This is the same argument we heard about the banking industry, right? All these individuals who were talking crap about Obama, and Obama definitely worked with Goldman Sachs, and now we know because of WikiLeaks that Hillary was giving, speeches to Goldman Sachs, and even since Obama's left office, he's gone getting paid to give speeches to banksters and stuff. So it's just sort of par for the course, right? We expect that almost, but some of you were calling out Obama and Hillary for it, but now that Trump's doing it, you're making excuses, and I think you need to look at that and see why you're being inconsistent. What are you afraid of? Just admit. This is the problem with following a man, following a human, not yourself, and not believing in yourself and looking for an external leader and for an authority figure. They will disappoint you. They will rule you astray. They will take you in a bad place eventually because they have their own self-interest generally to worry about. So Alex Azar formerly served as U.S. Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services under George W. Bush from 2005 to 2007. So he's worked in politics before in some capacity. And in June 2007, he began working as a lobbyist for the pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly and Company. He also served as Eli Lilly's spokesman as its Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs and Communications, and beginning in 2012, he was promoted to the President of Eli Lilly USA. Basically, he was in charge of the entire U.S. operations of this giant pharmaceutical company in 2012. And there's many reports showing that during his tenure at Eli Lilly, drug prices raised dramatically, including the doubling of the top-selling insulin brand that his company was selling. He's also previously come under investigation for, quote, systematic and illegal off-label sales of a powerful psychiatric drug called Zyprexa. So that was one of the drugs that the company's involved with. They pled guilty. They paid a $1.415 billion fine for promoting the use of drugs that were not approved by the FDA. Now think about this though, these companies are so big they can afford to do that. They don't really care about a small little fine here and there. They can afford to be penalized and then just continue their business. So they don't mind it. They're going to do whatever they want. And then when you're working with people in the government, you have this sort of buddy system. It's like they're almost certain and secure that, oh no, don't worry about it. Even if we get in trouble or somebody finds out, somebody starts poking around, we're just going to get a small fine and we'll be back, in business in no time. Reuters also reported that Democratic Representative Elijah Cummings said that the nomination of Alex Azar to Health Secretary was like a fox guarding the henhouse. And now he has to be approved by the Senate before it becomes official. He may face some resistance, but ultimately it seems like he's going to get through. And now the interesting thing is, so this guy, Alex Azar, if he is approved as the head of the Department of Health and Human Services, that means part of his job is to be responsible for oversight of the U.S. FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, which is responsible for regulating the drug industry, among other things. So Trump has already appointed another controversial person, Scott Gottlieb, who is a doctor, as commissioner to the FDA. So this dude, Gottlieb, he's also has close ties to the pharmaceutical companies, specifically selling and promoting opioids. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump declared that there was a national emergency dealing with opioids, yet he appoints somebody who is working with a company that produces pharmaceuticals to, quote, treat opioid addiction. And that's the problem is, not to get off on too much of a tangent, but, I've had friends die from opiate use and heroin use, and they tried to get off using Suboxone and pharmaceuticals that they just got more and more addicted to, and this is taking place all around the country. Meanwhile, earlier this week, the FDA, this same dude, Scott Gottlieb, puts out a statement saying that things like kratom, a plant that comes from a tree, that's dangerous and people should be careful and be wary of that, and instead we should just trust the pharmaceutical companies. So Trump's pick for the commissioner of the FDA, Scott Gottlieb, he worked with pharmaceutical companies and specifically worked with the opioid industry. Now you also have Alex Azar, who worked as a lobbyist and president for Eli Lilly, another giant pharmaceutical company. And I'm guessing, I'm sort of reading into this, that I believe with these two men in charge, we're going to see the FDA regulatory process essentially approve more opiate medicines, more opioid medicines that these two guys stand to benefit from and their buddies stand to benefit from, and more than likely, and especially because they're talking about the problems of kratom, we're probably going to see more attacks on kratom until they completely attack that and have that banned, and until the people can't have any kind of medicines they want except for the ones that come in the form of a pill. And then they'll feed you another pill to take care of the side effects of that pill. And I know I'm just preaching to the choir here probably for the most part. This is, it's huge. It's very problematic. And then the most, I think, atrocious thing about it and the just disturbing thing is then they're locking up each and every one of us, brothers and sisters out here, who choose to smoke a plant, or people who maybe they use kratom to try to get off of opiates, and they're going to eliminate that, and your only option is going to be these other pharmaceutical companies. So they're locking people up who are choosing to try to medicate themselves in whatever way they choose, right? But then the only drugs that are approved, the only medicines that are approved are the ones that come from these companies. So it's very problematic. Now, one more thing on this guy, and then I'll move on. And I do advise you guys to read this article yourself and check out all the links. I always put lots of links so you can look for yourself. But Alex Azar, this guy who has now been nominated by Trump, he's also a member of the board of directors of the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, a pharmaceutical lobby. So this is pretty interesting here. As the organization's name implies, they support the advancement of biotechnology, including the use of genetically engineered or modified organisms in food. And, this may be a controversial topic for some of you out there. Personally, I think that we need to do a lot more research into genetically modified foods and genetically engineered foods. And, I've done tons and tons of research and follow all the studies, and there's a lot of conflict of interest in the pro-GMO studies. I'm not anti-science, but I definitely think that we are gambling with nature, and I'm not so sure, more on sort of an esoteric spiritual level, if we should be manipulating nature in this directive of fashion. I know some people say we always manipulate nature just from existing, and that's true, but that's very different from going into the genetics of a plant or an animal and then changing those. So according to their site, though, that this guy sits on the board of directors until recently, they repeat the myth that plants and animals derived from biotechnology, so-called GMOs, are needed to help feed the world, keep the world safe, healthful, and affordable food, blah, blah, blah. That's a lie. That's been proven wrong plenty of times. The whole idea that golden rice and these other things are keeping people alive and saving Africa has been proven wrong. I'm not saying that nobody has, survived because they've been able to eat GMO crops, but it's not as big of a promise that they've been able to fulfill. It's not really doing what they're saying. So look more into that. And also, that organization that Alex Azar sat on the board of directors until recently also supported the so-called DARK Act, Deny Americans the Right to Know Act, which was touted as a labeling bill, but really in fact what it did is it stopped cities and states from making their own labeling laws and instead said that the federal government is now in charge of labeling. Now think about that. The federal government, who we just talked about, has close ties to the pharmaceutical industry. We know they have a revolving door with Monsanto and other biotechnology companies. They are going to be the ones who are in charge of now labeling. So when they put it out there and said, oh, this is a win, you know, March Against Monsanto led to a federal labeling law, I would prefer that my own city, my own community, my own state at the least has the ability to decide how we're going to label, what route we're going to take, as opposed to the federal government stepping in and saying, no, this is the only type of label that is acceptable. And I think that's where we're headed, and it's a dangerous thing to look into. So I go into this further, though. You can check this out on yourself, and just basically looking at how the swamp's not being drained. And if you've been paying attention for a while, you should have seen this coming, because Trump's done some executive orders that have been favorable to the pharmaceutical industry. And you know, he had a closed-door meeting in January with all the heads of the pharmaceutical companies. And it's just, you know, what should be expected by now. Not just from Trump, because if you're late to the game and you're saying, well, yes, it feels so good, I'm part of the resistance, down with Donald Trump. Well, were you critical of President Obama when he was dropping bombs on American citizens and killing innocent children? Were you critical of President Obama when he was working with the banksters and when he said he wasn't going to investigate the financial crisis or go after anybody? Were you critical of Obama when he pushed the National Defense Authorization Act, which allows for indefinite detention of American citizens? Were you critical of him during these things? And back to Bush and to Clinton and on and on and on. They are all not working for the people. Anybody who is allowed to be put in that position, and I'll say it time and time again until people get it, anybody who's allowed to get in that position is not working for the people. I'm sorry to say they have so much control that it's at that point. They control the media, they control academia, they control all kinds of forms of areas of our lives and influence, and they're able to affect the world in that way. The rest of it is just a show to make us feel like we have power in the system. The truth of the matter is that we do have power, but the power doesn't lie in that ballot box. It doesn't lie in that system. It lies in our own hearts, in our own minds. It lies within our very existence, humanity as a whole, us coming together and recognizing the potential within each of us and seeing the beauty that we possess and choosing to strive for that, you know, and to look at our insecurities, our doubts, our the limitations that we put on ourselves, and to listen to that voice and to look at that voice, and is that voice talking to us? Are we communicating in a healthy, compassionate way with ourselves and with others, or are we talking down to ourselves? Are we breaking ourselves down? We need to ask these questions. We need to look into our own hearts, because the system will not offer us what we're looking for. I don't believe so, and you can keep trying, my brothers and sisters, and we can meet where we can, and you can go to the ballot box when you need to, but I don't think that's where the real change is going to take place. I have a lot of ideas on that. I've written books about that. I've done tons of interviews. I don't want to get too much into that right now. Let's cover the news. But if you're looking for real solutions, I do believe they exist, and let's talk about that. All right, so let's look at this other one here. This is called Climate Engineering is a Gateway to Global Governance. And this is one that I'm going to actually be doing a specific video on shortly, because I think it deserves its own topic. I'm going to do the short version for you guys right now. This is an article I wrote last week, and what it looks at is the fact that we are dealing with, well, for those who don't understand what geoengineering, let me explain this. Geoengineering, climate engineering, is the specific, deliberate modification of climate and weather for the stated purpose of combating climate change, global warming, you know, different terms. But it's essentially us deciding to start manipulating the weather, manipulating the climate to try to keep humanity alive longer and to fix the planet. And increasingly, people are saying this is the only answer, this is the only option that we have, because people won't change their ways. I tend to believe that, you know. I don't even want to get into the whole climate change, global warming thing. I just want to focus on this. What I will say is I believe that geoengineering is being sold to us as a lie. For many years, people have said that they believe there are what is known as chemtrails, and I don't even like to use that term. I've never used that term in any of my writing, because the science is geoengineering, and specifically it's called solar radiation management. And solar radiation management is about spraying aerosols from the back of planes, the exhaust of planes, in order to put different particulates, aerosol particulates, into the air to try to reflect the sun's light to cool the earth a little bit. Look into this. This is not a conspiracy. Look up geoengineering, look up solar radiation management, albedo modification. There's a couple different terms, and I've written extensively on it. Just search my name in geoengineering. I wrote a very, very long one that I'll post a link to in just a moment about the history of hurricane modification. Now, what I'm saying though is that people have said for years that they believe that there was some kind of covert program going on, and they've been called crazy, and maybe you're thinking, oh God, here's this conspiracy theorist talking to me now. All I'm asking is, again, to suspend your cognitive dissonance and to think about this. We know 100% for certain that there is a science called geoengineering that talks about doing a number of different things. Ocean acidification talks about trying to mimic volcanoes, but specifically solar radiation management talks about using planes to spray particulates in the sky and to create patterns and all this kind of different things. They talk about creating giant mirrors to reflect in space, all these different things. But we're focusing on solar radiation management, geoengineering. And what that describes, and what they say they are only using computer models to test, looks a lot like what many people have talked about and said they've seen in the skies for decades. And what I believe is going on, and I'm saying this as a journalist from doing tons and dozens of research and reading good material on this. We know that this exists. We know that it's happening, and it's finally hitting the mainstream where people are having to accept that climate engineering and geoengineering, weather modification, exists. It's an actuality. It's a reality that is taking place. And there's cloud seeding, which is a different form. There's lots of different forms. And if you look at my article, yes, the U.S. government has experimented with hurricanes. You can see that this goes back 150 years of scientists and researchers trying to experiment with the weather. And not only that, you have the military talking about using weather as a weapon. And they did this this is declassified, Operation Popeye in Vietnam. They created rainstorms to try to flood out the Ho Chi Minh Trail to attack the Viet Cong, and so this is a long history of this. It's been ongoing. So where the separation takes place from theory to reality is this. It's the fact that some people believe that it is already happening and has been going on. Others say, no, you guys are crazy. That's not real. But this science of geoengineering is real, but it's not happening yet. Because that's what the claims make. All these scientists and researchers say they are not doing any of these programs. They haven't tested them yet. But unfortunately, because of the science of geoengineering, how do you go out there and test the effect on people without doing it? You can't just create a bubble and spray it and see how it acts in the bubble. You have to see how it reacts in the real world, in the climate. And all of the research and the studies that have come out have shown that once you start geoengineering, you cannot stop. It just like that movie Geostorm, the fact that that's coming out right now is not coincidence. It's what we call predictive programming, okay? I'm going to show you in just a second when we look through this story. I keep up with a feed subscriber, a feed reader, and so I check the term geoengineering every single day. And every single day for the past months, there's been an increase in articles talking about, is geoengineering the answer? Is this the golden solution? Is this the way we're going to save the world? And there's some people talking about the negatives, but for the most part, it's being pumped up increasingly, and that's been happening for years. And now we've gotten to the point where just this past week, the U.S. House of Representatives Subcommittee on Environment and Subcommittee on Energy held the first ever House hearing on geoengineering or weather modification. It was titled Geoengineering, Innovation, Research, and Technology. And it brought together members of the House committees as well as representatives of think tanks, scientists, and researchers in the field to discuss the future of geoengineering research and whether the Trump administration should allocate funding. Because the other thing is this, since Trump doesn't believe in climate change and global warming, whether or not you do is irrelevant to this conversation. The point is, he doesn't, his administration doesn't. And so they're looking for other ways to sort of say that they're fighting change of weather and different destruction, environmental destruction, without going after carbon. They don't want to go after and I don't believe that. I don't think we should be taxing people's carbon. I don't think that's going to incentivize people to change. I don't know what will incentivize people to change. What will make you change? How do we make you change? How do we get you to think deeper and to look for answers? I don't really know. But the point is, they're choosing to go out using geoengineering. So you can look at the article here. It lists all the people involved, Cornell University, someone with the Marine Cloud Brightening Project. You also have some think tanks and on and on and on. And I quote them, and basically the reason this article is called Geoengineering is a Gateway to Global Governance is because when you think about this, if one country starts geoengineering, it's going to affect countries around the world. So they're already saying we cannot unilaterally have the United States or some other country do this alone. We have to develop some form of global governance that we can all agree upon to start doing this. And this is to save the planet. So in order to save the planet, the world is going to start climate engineering. And in order to climate engineer, they're going to have to come to new terms of agreement. They're going to have to create some sort of global governance structure, at the very least, to regulate climate engineering. And I can imagine that that will only be the first step towards a global government in general. And some might say, well, what's so wrong with that? We need to address global issues now. We're getting to that point. I would say yes, but remember what we were just describing with the United States government being completely out of control, and then you look at now how there's a shift in power, right? Who's now the next superpower that's taking place? I don't know if you guys understand or recognize that in our lifetimes we're going to see the United States shift from being the superpower, and it's going to be a different experience. It's been that for those of us who've been in the United States for most of our lives. Now China is going to take over in that realm. Russia's also becoming more powerful, and other nations that are breaking away from the petrodollar and breaking away from U.S. hegemony are going to become increasingly important, right? So when you take those nations, though, they're authoritarian nations, they're communist nations, they're mass surveillance, a lot of the things that we have in the United States. You don't take those type of authoritarian governments and put them into a global government and get out some peaceful, freedom-loving government. You're going to get something much worse, and you're going to put these people in control of the weather as well, the climate, and it's a scary future. So look into that. If you've never done any research, scroll down to the bottom of this article. At the very end, see this. It says, for a much deeper look into the history of climate and weather engineering, please see this. That's the hurricane article I was talking about. Look into that one. Do the research. It's worth your time. It's worth your energy. I promise you. Now we're going to wrap up here. Just a quick mention of this. Your tax dollars being used in another great way. This week, the U.S. House and the Senate, and on and on. I mean, this is the reason I don't even want to spend too much time on this is because it's such an annoyance that these are kind of just, it's what we consider to be a rubber stamp, right? There's no vote. There's nothing that takes place. It's just every year they're going to approve increasingly bigger budgets. The National Defense Authorization Act happens every single year. It's the military budget of every year of the year, right? And nobody votes against it because nobody wants to be seen like they're going against the veterans or they're against the war effort, right? So it just keeps growing and growing and growing every year to now the House just approved. I don't even know if we can fathom as simple people who will never see this amount of money or need this amount of money, $700 billion. Like, do you understand? Like a billion, like, a million, 700 times. So they approved $700 billion for the National Defense Authorization Act to boost the war effort by $80 billion. And critics are saying, hey, that amount alone could pay for free public college tuition, and among other things. The vote was 357 to 70, with 127 Democrats supporting this. This is going to provide cash for 90 F-35 jets, more weapons, it's insane. And this happens every year. This is the National Defense Authorization Act. And of course, there was some attempts to challenge the NDAA's Section 1021. If those who remember 2011, President Obama signed the NDAA 2012, which allowed for indefinite detention of American citizens. Look it up, NDAA 2012, indefinite detention. And guess what? It's still in there. Nobody's changed that. So if Trump or some other president comes along and decides they want to be a tyrant and indefinitely detain American citizens who are suspected of terrorism or extremism, it's legal. And that's still in there. So that's something to be thankful for. Now, I mentioned earlier that I've been taking a social media, specifically a Facebook break, because, well, it's not really healthy for me. I've been on social media so much this year because of my job as a journalist and my role as an activist and doing this tour and just spreading these ideas of individual liberation and self-healing and all this stuff around for a while. So I haven't had time to break from it, and I finally got around to breaking from Facebook, and I'm on Facebook. But I'm letting go of my personal profile for a while so I can work on some new projects, and that's what I want to mention for a moment. But I do want to show you guys this. If you've never heard of Steemit, check out Steemit. You can see the link there. My profile is steemit.com/@dbroze, and I've been posting. I have a friend's posting for me. I'm not doing this. Thank you, Kenny, who's posting articles for me and things. So I'm still posting on Steemit. I'm still tweeting out my articles. This is one I wrote the other day. Facebook debates have made me impatient and bitter. And this is a part of what he's calling stream of consciousness that I'm posting every couple days, just random thoughts. I'm trying to get in the habit of writing more. Writing is such a meditative practice for me, but I focus so much on just writing articles or essays or books that I haven't really just got to write lyrics or poetry or just my thoughts for a while. So I'm trying to make an effort to do that. I also wrote this one here: we encourage our own enslavement, or people are too lazy to change. And this is what I was talking about, like, what is it going to take to motivate people? I don't know. This is just me expressing my frustration with that, and what related to surveillance and in general, but how do we motivate people to change? How do we get people to change their lifestyles? Whether we're talking about, we started out talking about the Keystone XL pipeline and supporting the oil industry. We're talking about surveillance. We're talking about the pharmaceutical industry. We're talking about all these different areas. How do we think about, instead of just complaining, just protesting, how do we actually take action in our lives that is going to achieve the change we want, as opposed to simply just bitching about it, complaining about it? I think that there is a way to do that. It's what I call holistic activism or holistic anarchism. I've done an interview recently on the Corbett Report with James Corbett. Some of you may know him. You can check that out. I also just put out a brand new essay called Defining Holistic Activism, or if you're an anarchist, Holistic Anarchism. And I explain what this means. And basically what it means is when you see a problem, say the big pharma industry, instead of just focusing on the problem and then complaining or going to ask the government to fix it or trying to protest out in the streets, I'm not saying don't do those things, but instead of only doing those things, ask yourself, well, how am I supporting big pharma? Okay, well, you know what, I'm taking Adderall all the time to, and I'm not saying some people don't need pharmaceuticals. I'm not going to say that, because there are mental health issues and there is a place for that. But the problem is that we have a society that has an over-reliance on that. It's pushed through the marketing, through advertising, through the freaking Google ads and all this stuff all over the place. And we have this over-reliance on pharmaceuticals and on Western medicine, as opposed to looking to, more natural medicine, plant medicine, and to looking to what our ancestors have used. Combining the good with the old with the new, and taking the best of that, and not relying on one system. So, as a holistic activist, you would look at that situation and say, okay, well, I'm going to make sure that none of my money goes to those industries, and I'm not going to support them. I'm going to educate myself as much as I can about the topic, and I'm going to educate other people. So you start looking about actionable steps. And in the same way, say you're against the March Against Monsanto, or you're with March Against Monsanto, and you're with the End the Fed movement. So you ask yourself, how can I take steps to remove my support from that system? So not only do you go march against Monsanto and protest and rally, but then you stop buying Monsanto's products. You don't use Roundup, you don't use pesticides and support the pesticide industry. You don't buy traditionally grown crops. You go to the farmer's market whenever possible and buy directly from farmers when possible. You start thinking holistically about the whole system rather than just the problem that you see in one piece. And that's what holistic activism is about. Damon, if you go ahead and post that link, that'll be great, and you guys can check that out, and that's also on theconsciousresistance.com. And now that we're at the end, I'm available to take questions. The one thing I want to mention to you, just to put a thought into your head, there's a topic I've been reading a lot about called universal basic income. And I've read pro opinions, against opinions, and all over the board, from anarchists who think it's possible without having a government, to people who think the government should be in charge, people who think a global government should be distributing this. But basically, UBI, or universal basic income, is the idea that all humans have should have enough money to take care of their basic necessities. And there's a lot of arguments on how do we do this without taxing the heck out of everybody, or should we use robots to start doing all the work, and then we tax the robots, and then the money from that feeds people. I don't know, there's a lot of different ideas. I just want to throw that out there to you guys. Have you ever looked into universal basic income? Have you ever, what are your thoughts? Do you think it can work? Do you think it's problematic? For me, I'm always against taxation, involuntary taxation, because I don't believe in force. I think force is violence, and government is also violence when it's done involuntarily. So I'm interested. I like learning about it. I like reading about it. I'm not sure how we get there yet. And I also don't know. I mean, I'm definitely probably going to be one of the people who's out there arguing for robot rights in the future, because the more and more human-like they become, then the more difficult it's going to be to say that they don't have rights, if rights even exist, or that they shouldn't be treated with kindness. Let's just say that. But that's it for the show, guys. Unless you got comments on UBI, I'm going to scroll down now and start reading some of the questions. Are you planning on another Decentralize Your Life tour? I missed you last time and I was bummed. Yes, Adam Crary, we are definitely doing another tour in 2018. I don't know, where are you at, man? What part of the country were you at? We would be definitely doing that. If you want to find out more about all the cities we visited and what our plans are for next year, check out theconsciousresistance.com/tour. And also, Adam, I'm going to be putting out lots of video. I have so much video footage and photos that we haven't released. I'm going to be working on that over the next couple months as I'm taking my social media break. So look out for more of that. I would say that academia has control. Academia does have some level of control. If you go to the Conscious Resistance Facebook page and look up our videos, I did an interview about a week ago with this guy named Daniel Golden, who wrote a book called Spy Schools, all about how the CIA and FBI and different intelligence agencies are infiltrating academia and universities around the country. So I would check that out for sure. Money has become more important than life itself. Bloody, pathetic politicians. Yeah, man, I'd say that's pretty sad. Government-funded science is bogus. Typically, I would question government-funded science. Big Pharma is the problem, and the DEA is the Big Pharma hitman. Yep, the DEA arrests everybody who tries to compete with Big Pharma. This is why media monopoly should not be allowed. What's up? What's up? Follow your intuition. Great news. Anything else? All right, cool. I don't see many other questions. Thank you for everybody who's been checking in, wherever you've been listening from, and for tuning in. I try to do this show every Friday. I guess I'll get back to doing it. And as I said, we're going to step up the format. The video so far looks like it's been rolling through. It hasn't been skipping too heavily. If it has been, if it's been hard to listen to, I apologize. I'm going to work on the bit rate and everything and get it down to a level of being very smooth, and the frame rate getting down being very smooth, so there's no issues. Also, if you like this shirt, email me at derrick@theconsciousresistance.com. We have gray, we have mint blue, it's like a light blue. We also have other shirts. You can find those on theconsciousresistance.com on our store page. And if there are no further questions, then that's it from okay, you're in Boston. Yeah, we went to Northampton, Massachusetts. We didn't come to Boston, but definitely we're going to be doing more cities next year. We'll add Boston. And Melissa Cluth, we did come to San Diego. If you check out the tour dates, you'll see when we came, but we're absolutely coming back to San Diego. And if you want to get involved with some activists, look up on Facebook the San Diego Freethinkers and connect with those guys, and see if you guys can do some good work together. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you to the Mind Unleashed and Wake Up News for sharing this out, and to everybody who listened through those pages. Remember, you're doing a lot of good work out there, whether you realize it or not. You might be stuck in a place where you have a lot of emotional, personal issues that you feel are keeping you from actually reaching your fullest potential. That's what I'm trying to focus my work on, is helping myself reach my fullest potential, trying to graph and catalog how that takes place and turn it into something that can be practical and will be usable for other people. And it's what I call the holistic self-assessment. I plan to release this in early 2018. So if you feel like you're in a rut and you're in a place that you need some help, contact me, Derrick@theconsciousresistance.com. I would love to share these ideas with you and hear what works for you and see if we can help each other. So thank you guys for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.